And the cool thing is, like, I always equate it to I say that often, but to me, like, making a film like this is like, you're only, like, it's constantly problem solving, right? And I equate it to a puzzle with a million pieces. And even if it's a million pieces, there is a solution. There's always a solution, and at some point you're gonna find it. And like when you make a puzzle, you just struggle, and sometimes you don't find those pieces, and at some point, boom, you find a few, and then the whole thing works. So it's the same thing, right? It's like what JP was saying. Is like, but I think for this one, is like knowing that there's always a solution. It will find itself.
First, Pierre and JP, thank you both so much for taking the time to talk to me about the film, and congratulations. It's an incredible achievement, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Thank you, man.
Appreciate it.
Our pleasure.
So for my first question, I would love to touch on one of the elements I loved about The Bad Guys 2, which is how much bigger of a film it is in every sense of the word, especially when compared to the first. The stakes are more prevalent and the scope is huge, entering the vast thematic territory when the story requires it. Yet at the same time, you were still able to retain those smaller, more grounded familial elements between the characters that make their interactions and moments between each other feel vulnerable and realistic. I'd love to ask both of you how you went about balancing such a large scope within the film, where the characters infiltrating the weddings of billionaires and traveling to space, with those smaller, more intimate, character-driven moments throughout the film's plot.
I mean, that's a good question. I mean, and by the way, this is kind of the DNA of the first film as well, and I think it's all about like keeping that in the second one. I mean, the trend on sequels obviously is to usually make movies a bit bigger than the first ones, and I think JP and I were super excited just to be able to do the same thing on this one. What's interesting is, like, it's not just a trend for sequels, it's also in animation, because you have a lot more assets already built from the first one. You can build upon that and then stretch your legs even further. I think what's cool about Bad Guys 2 in particular is, or Bad Guys in general, sorry, for the franchise, is the fact that it's based on books, and each book explores, new genre, new territories, and we wanted to do that as well. So this is why we really wanted that dabble with like big action scenes and kind of like action movies tropes, which by default and naturally will make things and the action feel bigger. So I think that's why this one is a lot bigger, and for us it was like, it's super fun to do action scenes anyway. And to your point, I mean, the trick is to how do you make sure that you keep your characters alive, to make sure that you still have these intimate moments, that it still feel relatable and grounded somehow through the characters' relationships. And I think same thing, the fact that it's an ensemble movie, one big thing we're very cautious about doing is like not lose any of the characters throughout the story, because it's so easy, we have so many and it's so easy to lose them. I think we were very mindful of that, and our writers were really good at keeping track of each of the characters, and they're really good at understanding their voices and really good at writing for each character specifically. So I think all of those elements help us navigate and mitigate all of that kind of that balance that can be a little tricky. JP, do you have any?
Yeah, I think, I mean, you answered it perfectly. The only thing I would add is, those quiet moments where we build the characters' emotions and their thoughts and what they're wanting only makes those action sequences more visceral and you have more at stake in those sequences, because you understand what the characters want and need and what's at stake emotionally, not just physically. So you need the balance of the quieter moments in order to the big moments really land, and vice versa. So they kind of feed off each other. And obviously also, as well as something that Pierre's really good at, is just like, you want to make sure there's a flow in the film and kind of make sure the audience is, you don't want to get action fatigue. You don't want to get dialogue fatigue. So you're kind of balancing that act of when you go to sequences and what the character needs at the moment.
And the main thematic complexity in terms of the inherent struggle of goodness is explored here just as earnestly and effectively as it was in the first film. Here, the inclusion of the bad girls makes for an interesting antagonistic angle that is explored to great effect throughout the runtime. As the leader of the group, Kitty Cat is a character foil to Wolf's inner turmoil in regards to grappling with whether the good life is the right choice for both himself and his friends. How'd you go about crafting these new characters and their dynamics in order to explore these core centralized themes throughout this film's unique lens?
Yeah, I think it really was from the beginning, like trying to figure out what the big central question was for our characters. And I think for for us, you know, we had a character that has, or a group of characters that had changed in the first film, and we know where we wanted them to end. We wanted them to end. I don't know if we can do spoilers here or not, but like we wanted them to end as secret agents. And so the question was, what are we questioning here? What is Wolf struggling with in particular? And I think logically, and that was not easy to find, by the way. It was something that we looked for a while, and I think we ended up with the logical follow-up to the first movie, which is he thinks he's changed, and as when you change, like as anyone, you do a big change in your life, and then that means you're also stepping outside of your comfort zone. His comfort zone is, or was, to be a bad guy. He was really good at it, and then now he's like a good guy, but he's discovering what it is, and he's not comfortable there. And I think it leads to doubt. Then I make the right choice, and I think that's kind of naturally, that's the central question we wanted to explore. And so therefore we needed a character, an opposing force to that, an antagonist that would just challenge him with that choice. Turns out that antagonist is literally himself from before. You know, I mean, not himself, but like
The representation of
himself. So that's what Kitty is. Kitty is what he used to be. Kitty is the call from the past. Kitty is the wolf. Is an evolution of modernized version of the big bad wolf from before. And Kitty, when I say Kitty and our gang, really. But she's really the one who's asking the question. And so I think that's where slowly we started to figure out what she is and what she represents. And I think that's what it is to me. It really is like that narrative force, that character that's literally challenging Wolf within his quest of becoming a good guy, and tempting him to go back to being a bad guy.
I think that's what excited us the most, right? You know,
Totally, of course.
When we started the second one, is like, let's challenge them as much as we can. You know, like, did they make the right choice? Let's throw everything at them that will tease them, and it would almost be easy for them to jump back to their old life. And let's see how they stick to their values, and let's see them struggle, because that's what you can connect to. You know, that's the reality of life, really. So I feel like Kitty obviously was an easy representation of that.
Yeah.
And then one way I've seen the bad guys films described in the past is Ocean's 11 for kids, and such a statement really speaks to the strengths of these movies overall. You as filmmakers are able to take the action and heist genres and translate the material to a medium that doesn't hold the confines of a live-action format, which means you can experiment and test a wide variety of concepts in relation to genre-specific tropes and moments in a way that feels inherently unique and spirited. I'd love to talk through the process of translating these genres to a medium such as animation, and how you go about retaining the grounded charm and flair of these types of movies, while simultaneously instilling a cartoonish and over-the-top perspective in the material.
Great question. I mean, at the beginning, Pierre, the way he pitched the first one was a Tarantino for kids, you know, and then that kind of molded itself to kind of Ocean's 11, a heist movie, but for kids, and a gateway to it. On this one, it was Mission Impossible. You know, we wanted to do the high stakes, big set pieces. And something that we really honed in is, yes, in animation, we can go big and we can do anything. But if you go too far, then it's not really grounded. And then you kind of lose the reality of what the characters are going through. So even in the camera work that we chose, we try to film it in a way where it is some of what live action. You know, we're very influenced by live action. We love those camera works and cinematography of it. So to give you an example, even the rocket sequence, which is one of our biggest set pieces that we have in our film, we did a lot of research, not just me and Pierre, but everybody, the entire team, with JPL consultants, on what it takes for a rocket to go into space, the preparation, the gas, where do the tanks come from, every single step, and then how does the fire come out? How does the steps come out from the rocket all the way to space? And we really honed in as real as we could. And then, of course, we take liberties to really make it more pushed in animation. Obviously, the guys are jumping on the side of it. Obviously, the wind would have like flown them off immediately, but that's the fun that we can have in our world. It's sophisticated but silly at the same time. So to answer your question, I think a lot of it is how keeping that believability as much as we can, and then really pushing the outer bounds of what animation can bring.
By the way, it all comes from a deep love for those movies. You know, like we're all like suckers for this film, for these kind of films. And I think it's really about paying homage to them. And that's why I think, in a way, I don't think we, besides a couple times, I don't think we referenced or we gave to animators or designers animation reference much in this movie. I did more in the first one, just to really nail the style with JP, the style of animation. But like in this one, I think more than anything, or like kind of always almost only references of live action films, so that we can ground it even more and the stakes feel even more real, you know.
It's true. By the way, the sound effects too and the sound design that we were
Yeah.
chasing was something that was also more grounded. So even visually, when you see the animation and they're pushed and it's wacky, the sounds that we're using and the sound effects, great sound engineers that we used, we're using some very real visceral sounds around this, especially for the theater, to really make you feel like you're in it. You know, like the rocket again is a great example, or even space. You know, how everything's muted and everything's through vibration instead of sound waves. Those are all rooted from real life. You know, so that's what, to me, like what the balance that we love about these films.
And then building off of your point, JP, about the cinematography, one element that I continue to love about both of these Bad Guys films are how they are animated movies that understand the importance of kinetic camera movement and how they can be used to highlight realism and add such a unique viewpoint onto the film's events. This technique is used to such an immense degree within this film in particular, with so many moments where the camera moves through the 3D space in a way that feels carefully controlled yet also vibrant with ease, such as when it locks on certain subjects or objects, distorts the 3D space to simulate motion or proximity, or manipulates focal length in such an interesting way. I'd love to touch on the process of crafting and visualizing these unique moments of cinematography from an animation standpoint, and how you go about conceptualizing and designing these shots from the film. As I understand, Pierre has spoken about how he wanted an anamorphic look for the film in terms of style.
Yeah, I mean, the anamorphic look is like, it's a general look, right? Like it comes from, again, it comes from anamorphic lenses used in live action. It's a technology that was invented. I don't even know the year, but it's like an old tech that was invented so that you could take full advantage of the 35mm format, but still have a or 35mm back film of the camera, but still have like an elongated format, a 2.35, 2.85 type of format on screen. So it's that deformation just gives you those artifacts on screen later on once you watch the film, which is like some of those like elongated flares and whatnot. So something that we hadn't seen much in animation, and it's such a trademark of live action films. And I think the first Bad Guys was one of the first movies in animation to actually explore these techniques or technology. But that doesn't explain the camera motion or the camera style of the film itself. So, yeah, I mean, like, again, it's a lot of work with our layout team, our head of cinematography. It's in storyboard, story artists usually don't, most of the time, don't really explore cinematography in their storyboards. Some of them do, but most of the time, storyboards really are here to explore like the story points and the comedy and the dialogue and the acting, and then we go in editorial and we just chop them up. And so the bringing like really strong camera work in storyboards don't make much sense because it's really quickly kind of butchered by the editorial process. So we look at the cinematography through the lens of Previs and the layout team, which literally brings like, you know, virtual cameras into the scenes. And so I think it's a deep work between the two of us and our layout team, just to make sure that we have those kinetic camera moments when they are needed. Obviously there's moments in the movie where it's much more calm and quiet, and therefore the cameras are much more, you know, like mimicking the mood of the moment, definitely. So you want those kind of active cameras when the scene or the action is more active, when the characters are frantic. You know, when it's much more calm or it's much more like it's supposed to be a comedic beat, then you're just like locking your cameras a bit more. But definitely from on the layout front, you know, they are using or trying to mimic like real lenses, real live action lenses, real devices that are, you know, just like devices from live action or tricks from live action to generate the motion of the camera, whether it's a dolly, whether it's a crane, or it's a handheld camera, or how do you call that? The
Dolly?
No, the dolly, the Steadicam or Steadicam. So they use all those tricks, you know, and the language is the language of live action between us, and so that's why it feels realistic. And then after that, JP and I, our job, and Theo and his team is like, our job is like to look at the sequence and just really make sure that through the whole sequence, there's a build-up, there's definitely a ride, or there's a flow happening within the camera work that allows you just that stays kinetic. By the way, this is all by design, right? It's not something that we wouldn't not necessarily do the same kind of tricks for a much more a much less for a movie that has less scope. This really lends itself for this kind of language, right? Camera language. And so it was really something at the forefront of our minds for the both of us, just to make sure that we had a feeling of a ride throughout the film.
To give you an example too, we would do scouting like you do in live action, where we ask Previs to take a look at the set, build the set, even if it's rough, and just put some cameras around, just so we can really feel the space that our characters are going to take part of, and then we can kind of choreograph according to and where we want to place the camera. So to me, that was really fun to do, because it's really kind of grounding the set and grounding the characters and grounding the camera, because we're all working from a realistic side. And even doing some coverage, for, let's say, the Cairo chase, for one. That was my favorite part, where we told the guys, just do a bunch of coverage. Here's some angles that we kind of want to do. Here's a storyboard, but go wild. Give us a bunch of options. And then in editorial, we would look at, let's cut to this camera. Let's cut to this one. And then we would tweak those cameras instead. So that to me was really fun, because it was very, very, I guess how you do it in live action in a way, but it kept it very organic, because we can go back to previs and tweak, and then come back to editorial, and then go back and forth, which we really took advantage of.
But that's the magic of animation. You really can. You don't have a shoot over 3 weeks, and then after that, or a month,
Right.
months, and after that you're done. You can't do anything anymore. We have the flexibility of just doing a first pass, getting it together, coming back, refining it, etc. So it's back and forth, a lot of back and forth, until it feels like really good,
And then one central element that really makes up the bulk of the bad guys too is how the characterization and relationships here feel so complex and nuanced, and really make up the bulk of the dramatic stakes and tension within the film. We see this exemplified throughout Wolf's relationship with Diane here, which has continued to evolve and flourish within this film specifically, and plays a key role in driving central story beats forward in a way that feels grounded and serious. I'd love to ask how you landed on this specific character dynamic to move so much of the dramatic weight within the plot of this film.
Pierre and I love characters, and that's what carries this story forward. And we talk about it all the time, where after the first one, at least for me, it felt like now we know who the characters are. It's when you work on an original, even these are from books, and we had some sense of who the characters were, and Pierre and the writer crafted these great characters in the first one. It's only when the animators add to it, and the actors and voice actors add to it, that towards the end of the movie you realize, these are the characters.
Yeah.
It takes like 3 years to really find them, which is amazing. You also, by the way, you also see that in live action shows. If you watch Friends, Seinfeld, the first season, they're kind of finding their way, and then the writers and actors kind of click, and they find those characters. And that's why you can see season 2 and 3 and 4 really take over and really hone in on the characters. It's kind of like that when you do a sequel. For me, it felt exactly the same, where we were like, okay, we know who these characters are, and we know what we want for them. Before we give it to them, let's challenge them, to go back to the challenges. We know that Wolf and Diane, we want them together. The audience wants them together, but we're not going to do it right away. We need to have some stakes. We need to have some friction. We need to have some issues and things that they don't have control over, because that's what makes it real, and that's what makes it fun. And for us, it was that, like, each character, it felt like we really knew who they were, and we really knew what they wanted and how they would get it. And in a way, it was really fun with the writers taking each scene through the process, because we know what the arcs are. We have the existential question is, did we make the right choice? But then we have Wolf really wants to get to Diane. We have the chief relationship too. The chief, which is now commissioner, completely has a full arc now, because we fell in love with her in the first movie. And on the second one, we really wanted to give her more of a role, because she's so embedded in the life of the bad guys. It was like, we always joke, right, Pierre? It's like Batman to the Joker.
Yeah.
Like, if the bad guys are not there, what is the goal of the chief? The chief has no purpose,
Yeah.
So we love that dynamic. And when you know this stuff and how it balances, then you can kind of move the story forward. And it kind of, it's not easy. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's fun, because we kind of know at least where the end goal is and what we want to do.
I think for the Wolf Diane in particular, that relationship, the way we built it in the first one, because Diane is such a key element to unlocking the journey of Wolf, right? They have that
Yeah.
very deep friendship on the first film, that is built on trust. Wolf, she shatters his vision of the world, his vision of his world. She shatters it completely and just shows him a new way. And so he fully trusts her
Yeah.
at the end, during the first film, and that's how he's completely vulnerable with her. He's like literally himself, and he's able to let go of his guard and trust because she went through the same thing as he did, and so therefore he's like, she's his guy, right? And at the same time, at the end of the film, she's also the character that is, she's incredibly pure, but at the same time she has a deep secret, a dark secret. And she's the only Wolf has revealed everything he is. He's like, I used to be a bad guy, now I'm a good guy. He has no secret.
Mm-hmm.
She is kind of pure, but at the same time she has a deep secret. So they both have their own journey that they have to go through, and that relationship is so strong between the two of them. There's so much trust, so much love, so much like support of each other. There's a very like wholesome thing happening, and so in that second movie, we really wanted to explore that. There is no, it's a great relationship to explore. And so even though they are never really together, they're together just twice in the movie. The rest of the film, they're completely separated.
Yeah.
We still could build, like, just with that conversation over the phone, you still know that they're completely bonded, and at the end, that's super satisfying when they're just finally together. It's an interesting relationship. It's a very pure one in a way.
And then for my last question, the inherent art of filmmaking itself is a learning process through and through. Throughout each project, filmmakers and artists are consistently pushing the boundary and adapting new skills and techniques to their work that allowed them to experiment and display clear artistic flourishes with ease. With a film like The Bad Guys 2, which is filled to the brim with such a vibrant and creative spirit, I'd love to ask both of you about one lesson or moment you learned from the process of making and crafting the film that you feel will stick with you or help you in some way on a future endeavor within both of your careers.
Well, that's a great question. I'll start real quick because I have one, and it's something that I learned from Pierre. I got lucky enough to join Pierre on this one as a co-director, and Pierre is an amazing mentor. I mean, he had a clear vision for Bad Guys 1, and he brought the whole studio on board, and then collaborated with everybody, and their Bad Guys 1 and Bad Guys 2 was the next challenge. How do we make it bigger, better? And there's a lot of things that I learned from Pierre, and I will keep learning. But the one thing that I will take forever with me that was just like a click, like a light bulb for me, was get it on the screen as soon as you can. And that to me was a really nice, fast lesson to take over, which is you want to fail as quickly as possible. To me, that's really what it meant, is whatever movie we think we have, put it on boards and let's just edit it together, put a full 90-minute animatic of the movie. It's going to be rough, it's going to be dirty, but put it on the screen as fast as you can, because that's when we're going to really see what we have and what we're going to learn from the sequences that we have, and we'll be able to pull things out, add things, go back to writing. But the faster you do it, the faster you get to the solution at the end of the day. So for whatever project I will ever work on, that's something that I will always continue doing because it was very beneficial.
Well, thank you, buddy.
Yeah. Thank you, buddy.
I think the big lesson on this one for me was
don't rush it and take your time and put it on the screen.
It was the not freaking out part,
Yeah.
It's interesting because somehow the first film, there's a bliss to not knowing, right? There's a bliss to be ignorant, and that's a saying, by the way, ignorance is bliss. And I think in the first film it was a little bit like that, where I was like blinded because I had no idea how big the mountain is to make a movie like this, right? I mean, I knew, but I didn't, because of course I've been working in animation for so long. I know how big it is and how hard it is, and yet you do the first time in the shoes of a director, and then you start going through the process, and you really don't understand how big this mountain can be in like making a film like this. And so the second time around, then and the second time around, then you don't have the ignorance anymore, and then you know what you're up against, and that's when you can panic a little bit, And there are moments in this one where it's not panic, but it's like when you don't find it, when you don't find the solution, when things like the creative process is not a straight process. The creative process is like bumping heads. It's like searching for things. It's like being like feeling a little desperate and then just finding a solution, just working with your buddies, your pals, and everything. And it's fantastic, by the way. Sometimes it can feel a little tough when you're not finding the solution and you're just banging your head for days and days and days, and everybody feels like we're never gonna get this done. And it's like, but then I think, and so it happened to me during this film where this is never gonna work, and you just search and search and search until you find it. And I think the big lesson was the movie reveals itself to you at some point. You know, as long as you're in good faith, your ego is not standing in the way, and you're able to listen to your collaborators because they're fantastic, then the movie will reveal itself, and it's going to be one of the best version it can be, you know. And I think that's what it was. It was like, I was not ignorant anymore, and I was a little panicked. And now, if I were to do a third one, I think I have that knowledge of, at some point, at one point or another, if you're like really listening to your guts and your team, the story is going to reveal itself, you know, as long as you're surrounded with the right people, obviously. But we are. So I think that's what it is. I think it's trusting the process in a way, but in a very wholesome, deep way. I think for the creative itself, not the technical process. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yes. True. I remember there were parts where we were trying to like jam in an arc and jam in this theme, and we were struggling. You know, we knew we wanted it. That was the right thing to do, and we just pushed it and pushed it and pushed it, and it just got to a point that this story is not letting us because it's not what it is, you know. And then we just it's kind of like letting go of the wheel, and then see how the wheel turns by itself and leads you to the right direction. And that's kind of what Pierre was saying, where it felt like, oh yeah, the story's going this way. Let's lean into that and see where we go. And then everything just goes and it falls right into place. It's incredible.
And the cool thing is, like, I always equate it to I say that often, but to me, like, making a film like this is like, you're only, like, it's constantly problem solving, right? And I equate it to a puzzle with 1 million pieces. And even if it's 1 million pieces, there is a solution. There's always a solution, you know, and at some point you're going to find it. And like when you make a puzzle, you just struggle, and sometimes you don't find those pieces, and at some point, boom, you find a few, and then the whole thing works. So it's the same thing, right? It's like what JP was saying. It's like, but I think for this one, is like knowing that there's always a solution. It will find itself. That's what it is.
Well, Pierre and JP, thank you both so much for taking time to chat with me about the film, and I wish you all the best going forward, and congratulations once again.
Thank you, Mitchell. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Great questions, man. That was fun.
Thank you.